Hi, my name is Sophie, and I'm 29 years old. I've been working as a graphic designer at a small marketing agency in downtown Seattle for the past 6 years. My job isn't flashy, but it's steady, and that's been enough for me. I've always preferred the quiet, predictable life. I'm the kind of person who thrives in routine, who knows exactly where the extra pens are, remembers every client's preferences, and keeps track of every deadline with military precision. I'm comfortable in my world of familiar spaces. An ordered chaos. It's how I operate, and it's been my way of keeping things stable. My life has always been a bit quiet. I'm a people person, but not the life of the party. I have a small, tight-knit group of friends, and one of them, Jake, has been in my life for as long as I can remember. We met in college, both a little shy, both a little unsure of ourselves. But when we started talking, it felt as though we had known each other forever. We clicked in a way that I had never clicked with anyone else. Our friendship grew effortlessly, and before I knew it, we were inseparable. Over the years, we had gone through a lot together. The late-night study sessions, the random adventures to random places, and the endless hours of talking about everything and nothing. He was my confidant, the one person I could always count on. Everyone in our friend group had always joked that we'd end up together, but I never took it seriously. He was my best friend, the brother I never had, and that was all. Jake had a way of making everything feel lighter, even the darkest days. He had a smile that could make you forget your worries, and a laugh that made everything seem right in the world. But no matter how many times our friends teased us about being a couple, I always shrugged it off. I never thought of Jake that way. He was the person who knew all my secrets, all my quirks, all my vulnerabilities. I couldn't imagine risking that by introducing romance into the mix. But lately, things had started to change. I couldn't quite pinpoint when it happened, but over the past few months, I had noticed subtle shifts in our dynamic. Jake's touches had become more lingering, his glances more intense. It wasn't anything overt, but I couldn't deny the moments when I felt a little too aware of his presence. The times when I caught him looking at me with something deeper than friendship in his eyes. I'd been trying to ignore it, convincing myself that it was just me overthinking things. After all, Jake was just my best friend, right? He couldn't possibly feel the same way. The morning of that Monday started like any other. I walked into the office, grabbed my coffee from the break room, and settled into my desk. The morning light streamed in through the large windows, casting a warm glow over the office, making everything feel peaceful. It was my favorite part of the day, quiet, calm, and predictable. Just the way I liked it. I glanced across the office and saw Jake already sitting at his desk, his face lit by the glow of his computer screen. He was typing away, probably working on one of the many projects we had on the go. I couldn't help but smile. It was a smile that came automatically whenever I saw him. But today, it felt different. Maybe it was the way his messy hair fell into his eyes, or the way his lips curled into that familiar, comforting grin when he saw me. Whatever it was, I felt a flutter in my chest, and it made me pause. "Hey, Soph," Jake called out, waving his hand in the air as I walked past his desk. His voice was light and teasing, and for a split second, everything felt like it always had. Easy, simple, and just right. "Hey, Jake," I said, returning the wave. "What's up?" "Not much," he replied, leaning back in his chair. "You free for lunch later?" "Sure, you know I am." "Same spot?" I said with a smile, already knowing the answer. It had become our tradition every Monday. We grabbed lunch at the same cafe down the street. Nothing fancy, just a chance to catch up and talk about whatever was on our minds. We had been doing it for years, and it had become one of my favorite parts of the week. He nodded, grinning. You bet. Same spot. I'll meet you there at noon. The rest of the morning passed quickly. We spent our time working on various projects, bouncing ideas off each other, as we always did. But today, something felt different. Every time I caught Jake looking at me, I couldn't help but notice how he seemed to linger just a moment longer. Unusual. It was subtle, but it was enough to make me wonder if he had noticed something in me that I hadn't acknowledged myself. Lunchtime came, and we headed out to our usual spot. The cafe was cozy, the kind of place where you could hear the soft hum of quiet conversation and the clinking of coffee cups. It was always busy, but it had a certain charm. As we sat down at our favorite corner table, I noticed that Jake was a little quieter than usual. He was fiddling with his coffee cup, his brow furrowed as if he was lost in thought. I glanced at him, concerned. Jake, you okay? He looked up, and for a moment, his eyes met mine with an intensity that made my stomach flip. Yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking about stuff. He paused, his eyes lingering on mine a moment longer. Sophie, can I ask you something? I felt my heart rate pick up, suddenly aware of the tension in the air. Of course, you can ask me anything. Jake took a deep breath, and I could see the wheels turning in his head, as if he was carefully considering his next words. Have you ever thought about us? I mean, not just as friends, but maybe something more. The question hung in the air, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. I had always known that Jake was different, but hearing him say it aloud, hearing him voice what had been lingering between us for so long shocked me to my core. Was he serious? Could it really be possible that Jake, my best friend, felt the same way? I looked at him, trying to steady my racing heart. Jake, we're friends. You're my best friend. I've never thought of us that way. He looked down at his hands for a moment, as if gathering the courage to say more. I get it. I don't want to mess things up, Sophie. But I can't help how I feel. I've been thinking about it for a while now. I had to ask. Do you ever wonder what it would be like if we weren't just friends? His words hit me harder than I expected. I had always thought of Jake as my rock, the person who was there for me no matter what. But now, with his confession hanging between us, I didn't know how to respond. Was this something I could even consider? Could I risk everything by taking our friendship into uncharted territory? I don't know, Jake, I said softly, my voice almost a whisper. I've never thought about it. Not like that. Jake gave a small, sad smile, his eyes filled with uncertainty. I understand. I just had to ask. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just me. But I needed to know. The rest of our lunch passed in silence. The usual ease between us had been replaced with something heavier, something more complicated. As we left the cafe, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotions. I was confused, a little scared, and unsure of what to do with the feelings that were now swirling inside me. As we walked back to the office, I couldn't shake the thought of what Jake had said. Maybe I had been blind all these years. Maybe there was something more between us than just friendship. But could I really risk everything for something that might not even work? The next few days felt like a strange kind of limbo. The comfortable ease that Jake and I once shared had been replaced by an awkward, unsaid tension. We continued to work together as usual, but there was something different in the air now. His usual jokes didn't make me laugh the same way, and I noticed that every time I caught him looking at me, his eyes held something more, something deeper than friendship. Jake was still the same person I had known for years, yet everything seemed to have shifted. I couldn't help but replay his words in my head. Have you ever thought about us? Maybe something more? What did he mean by that? Had I missed the signs all this time? Had he always felt that way? Or was this a new development? I had spent countless hours with him, sharing everything from silly anecdotes to the most personal details of my life. But I had never once thought of him romantically. Could it be possible that he had been holding on to these feelings for all these years? I tried to distract myself from these thoughts. After all, nothing had changed, right? We were still friends. But no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, a part of me couldn't let go of the possibility that there was something more between us. The more time I spent with him, the harder it became to deny it. The next week, Jake and I found ourselves in our usual rhythm at work. We spoke about projects, shared lunch breaks, and joked around as we always did. But there was this constant undercurrent between us, this almost magnetic pull that made my chest tighten every time I looked at him. I had never been this self-conscious around Jake before. But now, everything felt amplified. Even the smallest interactions seemed loaded with meaning. The way he would brush past me in the hallway, the way his hand would brush mine when we reached for the same file, it was all starting to feel more intimate, more personal than I was used to. And then, one afternoon, it happened. We were working late at the office, catching up on some overdue projects. The office was quiet, the only sound coming from the hum of our computers and the occasional click of a mouse. The others had all left for the day, leaving just the two of us alone in the stillness of the office. Normally, I would have enjoyed the quiet, but today it felt suffocating. Every moment seemed charged with an unspoken tension, and every glance we exchanged seemed to linger a little too long. Jake was sitting at his desk, but instead of focusing on his work, he was watching me. It was as if he was waiting for something, and I couldn't figure out what. I tried to focus on my own task, but I kept feeling the weight of his gaze on me. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I looked up, catching his eyes. "You've been quiet today," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I didn't know why I felt so nervous, but I couldn't shake it. Jake didn't respond right away. He just looked at me, his expression unreadable. For a moment, it felt as if time stood still, the space between us thick with unspoken words. Then he stood up from his desk, slowly walking toward me. I froze, unsure of what was happening. He stopped just a few feet away, his face serious. "Sophie," he said quietly, his voice low, "I need to know something." My heart skipped a beat. I had a feeling I knew what he was going to ask, but I couldn't bring myself to voice it. Instead, I just nodded, my throat suddenly dry. "Do you think about us? About what we could be?" His words hung in the air, heavy and raw. The vulnerability in his voice took me by surprise. This wasn't just a casual question, it was something that mattered to him, something that he had clearly been wrestling with for a long time. I wanted to respond, to tell him that I wasn't sure, to tell him that I had no idea what I was supposed to feel. But the truth was, I had been thinking about us more than I was willing to admit. The moments when I caught myself staring at him, when I felt my heart race when he touched my hand, when I found myself wanting to be near him even more than usual, it was all too much to ignore. "I don't know. Jake," I whispered, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to keep it steady. "I've been thinking about it, but it's not that simple. We've been friends for so long." Jake's eyes softened, and I could see the pain in them. It was as if he had been waiting for me to say exactly that. He stepped a little closer, his presence so close now that I could feel the heat radiating from him. "I know it's complicated, but I can't pretend anymore. I care about you, Sophie, more than just a friend. And I need to know if you feel the same." His words hit me like a tidal wave. I felt like my whole world was shifting beneath me. My best friend, the person I had trusted with everything, was standing right in front of me. asking me to confront something I had been avoiding for so long. The question wasn't just about us. It was about my own heart, my own fears. Was I ready to take the leap? Was I ready to risk everything for something that might not work? "I'm scared, Jake," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. "What if things change? What if we ruin what we already have?" He took another step forward, closing the gap between us. "I'm scared too, Soph. But what if we don't take the chance? What if we never know what could have been?" His words made my heart ache. I had spent so much time convincing myself that nothing could ever come of this, that our friendship was too valuable to risk. But now, standing in front of him, I realized that I was afraid of never knowing. Afraid of always. Wondering what if. "I don't want to lose you, Jake," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "I don't want to lose what we have." He reached out, gently cupping my face in his hands. His touch was warm, reassuring. "I don't want to lose you either, Sophie. But I think we both deserve to see what happens if we take that step." The intensity in his eyes made my heart race. Without thinking, I closed the distance between us, and before I knew it, his lips were on mine. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, as if we were both testing the waters. But then it deepened, and I felt every ounce of uncertainty, every ounce of fear, fall away. This was real. This was us. When we pulled away, our foreheads resting against each other, I could barely catch my breath. "What now?" I whispered. Jake smiled. His eyes filled with something I couldn't quite name, but understood nonetheless. "Now, we see where this goes," he said, his voice filled with warmth. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Maybe this wasn't going to be easy, but it felt right. For the first time, I was willing to take the risk. The next few days passed in a blur of emotions and uncertainty. Jake and I had crossed a line, and there was no going back. We were no longer just best friends. We were something new, something undefined but undeniable. As we settled into this new chapter, everything felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Our friendship had been the foundation of everything I knew. And now, that foundation was shifting, evolving into something that made my heart race and my mind question everything I had believed about love and relationships. After that first kiss, things didn't magically fall into place. It wasn't like in the movies where everything is suddenly perfect. In reality, it was messy, complicated, and a bit awkward. But there was something beautiful in that awkwardness. Something raw and real that made me feel like we were both experiencing this for the first time, even though we had known each other for years. We spent the next few days trying to navigate this new dynamic, still unsure of how to proceed. At work, we continued with our usual tasks, but there was a new layer of awareness between us. Every time our hands brushed as we passed a file or our eyes met across the conference room, it felt like electricity sparked between us. It wasn't just friendship anymore. There was a depth there, something that was hard to define, but impossible to ignore. One evening, about a week after our first kiss, Jake invited me over to his apartment for dinner. I had been hesitant at first, unsure of how to act around him now that things had shifted, but I couldn't deny the excitement that bubbled inside me. We had always been comfortable with each other, but tonight felt different. It felt like we were stepping into new territory that could either lead to something beautiful or to a mess we couldn't untangle. When I arrived at his apartment, he greeted me with that familiar warm smile, but there was a glint in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. He was nervous too. I could tell by the way his hands fidgeted with his shirt cuffs, or how he kept running a hand through his hair. We were both feeling the weight of what had happened between us, and neither of us knew how to take the next step. "Hey, Soph," Jake said, his voice soft but warm. "I hope you're hungry. I made pasta, nothing fancy, but it should be good." I smiled, feeling the familiar comfort of being in his presence. "I'm starving, actually. Pasta sounds perfect." As we sat down to eat, the conversation flowed easily, just like old times. We talked about work, our families, and even joked about our high school days. But every now and then, I caught Jake's gaze lingering on me for just a second too long. It wasn't the same as before. There was an intensity in his eyes now that made my heart flutter. "Jake," I said, putting my fork down and meeting his gaze. "What do we do now?" He looked at me for a long moment, his eyes searching mine, as if he was weighing his words carefully. "I don't know, Sophie. I've been thinking about that a lot. I think we take it one step at a time." I nodded, relieved by his answer. We didn't need to have everything figured out. I didn't need to know what this was going to turn into, but I was willing to take the risk. I had never felt this alive, this unsure, but this excited all at once. Jake had always been a part of my life, and now, in this new way, he felt like a part of my future. As the evening went on, we shared stories, laughed, and enjoyed the simple comfort of being in each other's company. The chemistry between us was undeniable, but there was a tenderness there now, a quiet understanding that things weren't just casual anymore. We had crossed a threshold, and everything felt different, but in a way that was both thrilling and scary. After dinner, we moved to the living room, settling on the couch. Jake put on a movie, but neither of us really watched it. Instead, we sat side by side, the space between us filled with an electricity that neither of us could ignore. I felt his presence next to me, every inch of me aware of how close we were. For the first time, I allowed myself to lean into him, resting my head on his shoulder. The familiar feeling of being close to him, of sharing this quiet intimacy, was comforting in a way I hadn't anticipated. "I never thought this would happen," I said softly, breaking the silence. Jake's hand found mine, his fingers intertwining with mine in that simple, natural way that made my heart race. "Neither did I, Soph," he said, his voice low and sincere. "But I'm glad it did. I'm glad we're here." I turned my head to look at him, and for a moment, everything else faded away. His eyes were soft, but there was a deep emotion there that made my breath catch. He wasn't just my best friend anymore. He was someone more. Someone who had seen the parts of me that no one else had, and who, despite everything, still wanted to be with me. "You mean the world to me, Jake," I whispered, my voice filled with more emotion than I had expected. "I don't want to lose you, no matter what happens." Jake squeezed my hand, his smile soft but filled with meaning. "You won't lose me, Soph, I promise." The evening passed in a haze of warmth and connection. As the movie played on in the background, we talked about everything and nothing. There were moments of laughter, moments of quiet, and moments where the world felt just right. In those moments, I felt the truth settling in my heart. I was in love with Jake. Not just the friend I had known for years, but the man who had somehow always been there, even when I hadn't seen him that way. As the night came to an end, we stood at the door, and for a long moment, neither of us moved. We just stood there, looking at each other, knowing that this moment marked the beginning of something new. Something that could turn out to be everything we both wanted, or something that could change everything we had ever known. Jake leaned down, his lips brushing against mine once again. The kiss was soft, but it held so much more hope, promise, and the possibility of a future together. It wasn't just a kiss between friends anymore. It was the kiss of two people who had discovered something they hadn't known was there. When we pulled away, I looked up at him, feeling both nervous and excited. "So what now?" He smiled, his eyes warm and filled with affection. "Now, we see where this goes. Together." And in that moment, I realized that no matter what the future held, we had already taken the biggest step. We were no longer just friends. We were something more. And that was the most exciting part of all.